From Detroit's North End neighborhood, this is your Daily Detroit for Wednesday, February 12th, 2020. I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jer Stays. On today's show, Sven dove deep into the muck that is the Dot parking garage in Ferndale. He's got an in-depth story on the project.
Detroit City Council wants action on water shutoffs.
The Motown Museum is out with a new rendering showing their big new expansion.
A new Amazon facility is on the way to western Oakland County.
A new chapter for an historic mansion in Northville.
A legendary Detroit techno artist teams up with the sexiest man alive.
And Troy is gearing up for Restaurant Week. All of that after we thank our members on Patreon who make this show possible. This helps keep Daily Detroit free for everyone and lets us dive into interesting stories around town. Our newest member is Aaron. Thank you for joining us. Also, thanks to longtime patrons like Halima and Steven. You can join them and become a member at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
Now to quote from that terrible song, let's get it started.
The city of Ferndale will spend as much as $1 million in additional money on the Dot, which is the big mixed-use parking structure currently under construction downtown. Sven, you covered the city council meeting the other night. You have a story up on dailydetroit.com. But first, before we get into all of this, remind us what this project is all about.
The Dot is the name they've given to the big mixed-use parking structure that's taking shape right now on West Troy Street. That's a block south of 9 Mile, so DOT stands for Development on Troy. This has been under construction for like a year now, and it's been a huge project. They had to dig out a huge piece of earth, to build a lower level parking deck, and they're adding 3 levels on top of that. It's been a major disruption, as anybody who's tried to park in downtown Ferndale on a busy night well knows. This is being built on a former surface parking lot that itself had 140 spaces just about. So that's taken a lot of parking offline for the downtown and all the businesses down there. It's been, quite the controversy.
I know that there has been a lot of talk around how difficult it is to park in downtown Ferndale because it did take off that important lot. All right, so what happened where they needed an extra $1 million? I mean, it's not like it's something that they keep as, change in the couch or anything.
Right. Well, so as part of the plans to make this mixed use, there are plans for street level retail spaces, about 11,000 square feet, but more importantly, 3 upper floors of office space totaling about 25,000 square feet. Recently, the private developer that the city is working with on this project, they're called Versa Wanda, and they would lease and manage those parts of the project. They told the city that the funds that they need to price and bid out the platform to go on the 4th floor and build the office spaces above it were lacking from the plan.
Woof. So why weren't the funds included?
Well, that's the big question. It's not entirely clear, but it appears someone dropped the ball. The office space was always contingent upon the project receiving funding and brownfield approval from the state of Michigan, which didn't come until October. So there have been several change orders to the project to date, which is due largely to the project's complexity. This is a public-private partnership, to use the catchphrase.
And that's so catchy.
It is so catchy. What that's meant is that the designs for the parking structure have changed a few times, even while the structure is under construction. Here's how Joseph Gaccio, the city manager, explained it to me Monday night after the meeting.
It is a complicated project that is 3 years in the making with multiple financial partners. That goes from the city. The DDA has contributed to this. The city's Brownfield Fund has contributed to this. The state of Michigan has contributed to this, and a developer has contributed to this. So when you're trying to align 5 levels of financing toward one final vision that has been built over the course of 3 years in robust public engagement process, there's a tendency to want to oversimplify it, but it's frankly a very difficult project with a moving target because you're always trying to secure that commitment from the state with the developer.
The city council also directed Gaccio to finish negotiating the final pricing with the developer and report back to it. Those final figures are expected in March or April. I should also note, this is important, that the developer is obligated to reimburse half of the city's costs according to the terms in the development agreement.
All right, so I'm a pretty big nerd around this stuff, and even I'm finding this to be a complicated project, man. How is this news being received?
Not so well. There was a long back and forth at the city council meeting Monday night between council members, some of whom weren't even around on council when this project was first approved a few years ago, and Gacho himself and residents who came out to the meeting. I heard some of the residents sitting in the audience saying things like, "This is Ferndale House all over again." That's a reference to the big loft building that was recently completed on West 9 Mile. It went through a number of late changes that many people say came up short of what the developer originally promised for that building. One of the city council members called this whole thing a flub up. He said he wanted to use a different word, but
that's the most polite version of that word I have heard.
Right. But, council voted unanimously in the end to approve the extra funding because they felt like they had no real choice.
So how did they get painted into the corner here? Why did they feel that way?
Because not approving the extra funds would have meant that after all of this heartache and the years of, debating this project and getting site plans approved and involving the public, that the city would end up with just a plain old parking structure. The city has always wanted to include the multiple use aspects of this structure, including the below market retail spaces. They call them entrepreneurial retail spaces because they say they deliberately don't want like a Starbucks to open up there. They want, small businesses. And the office space, which is something that the city has long had a goal of, building up more office space in the city. There's not much. The other key is that the fourth floor platform that is, key to all of this serves a vital role. It's going to anchor metal and glass facades that are decorative, essentially, and they will disguise the fact that it's essentially a parking structure, right? So if you don't build that, you don't get those facades, and it just looks like a regular parking garage.
Well, it's one of those things that I think if this would have just been a garage by itself, I feel like this project would have been a lot simpler than all of the trouble they went through to try to make this mixed use thing that should, I'm guessing, be better in the end?
Yeah, absolutely. The other concern I should mention is that if there's no office, that the developer Versa Wanda might choose to abandon the project as well, since if it can't, lease and operate office space, it might lose interest in just trying to lease and operate retail spaces as well. And then they'd have to set up a whole separate bid to get somebody to lease out the office spaces, and they'd have a big mess on their hands,
Well, wow. So when is this whole thing supposed to be finished?
Project completion is targeted for May, and they said despite this hiccup, all things remain consistent with that. So,
all right, thanks, Sven.
Detroit City Council members plan to ask Governor Gretchen Whitmer to declare a public health emergency over water shutoffs for residents who can't afford their water bills. Council President Pro Tem Mary Sheffield is directing legal staff to prepare a resolution urging the governor to take action. They're also seeking a moratorium on shutoffs until officials can agree on the terms of a proposed ordinance governing affordable water. Sheffield told the Detroit News that declaring an emergency could trigger funding to help the problem. Separately, Detroit Water Department Director Gary Brown is asking the city council to approve a measure that would allow the Great Lakes Water Authority to vote on doubling the money it sets aside for a fund that helps low-income customers. Detroit began shutting off water service to delinquent accounts in 2014 during the city's bankruptcy. It gained national attention and outrage in the process. The Freep recently reported that the city had shut off water to more than 25,000 accounts in 2019 as of late October and had restored service to nearly 14,000. About 10,000 of the accounts left without water service are believed to still be occupied.
Sven, this issue never seems to go away, and I think it's just an indicator of chronic poverty and institutional imbalances in this country.
40% poverty rate in the city.
Yep. And I don't see how this changes. You're going to throw more money at it. And it's obviously it's important that people have water. But long term, I look at it and go, how do we get out of this cycle?
Yeah, absolutely.
A new video of the Motown Museum expansion has got people talking as it puts in scale the size of the $50 million project. It stretches across 6 lots and 5 homes on Grand Boulevard and has a large 50,000 square foot mid-century modern looking expansion filling the back half of the block. We will link to it in the show notes. It is pretty cool. So far, the museum has raised half the money needed. The expansion is the last museum designed by renowned architect Phil Freeland before his death. The new square footage will allow for additional exhibits, a performance venue, more recording studios, a larger retail shop, and meeting spaces.
So, Jared, this is great to see this. I know this project has been in the works for years. In fact, as a freelance writer many years ago, I was involved in a meeting for some potential work. It never came to pass, but I know firsthand that this has been in the cards for a long time. I love the Motown Museum. I've been to it. It's a real jewel of the city, no doubt. But let's be honest. If you didn't know it was there and you were just driving down West Grand Boulevard, you could easily miss it. I mean,
for sure.
It's two houses that look no different than all the houses surrounding it, right? When this project is finished, in who knows when, it's going to be a lot harder to miss. Let's put it that way, because you've got the big, mid-century modern-looking expansion that you mentioned that's going to sort of tower over the houses on the block, and frankly, inject a little badly needed razzle-dazzle. I mean, I've always sort of had the feeling that the Motown Museum could be a lot more and should be, because I mean, what a fantastic legacy and imprint it left on the city.
Oh, for sure. And it's loved the world over, and Detroit should be the center of all of this. Frankly, I mean, it's about time this happened. I feel like this should have happened 20 years ago, and it just hasn't been in the cards till now, and I'm glad that there's progress. A new Amazon distribution center in Lyon Township took a step forward this week. Their planning commission recommended approval of an 85,000 square foot development on Grand River west of Napier Road. The facility will focus on the last mile of sorting and delivery. It'll operate 24 hours a day, and if given final approval, will be ready by the end of the year. The retail apocalypse continues to march on, my friend.
The historic Northville Mansion, once owned by local Cadillac dealer Don Massey, is becoming a center for adults and children struggling with autism. The Oakland Press reports that a nonprofit called the Living and Learning Enrichment Center recently purchased the 6,000 square foot mansion and 14-acre property. The organization provides jobs, social programs, and services to around 150 children and adults with autism. Plans call for therapy and wellness spaces, plus lavender, bee, and alpaca farms. Officials are working to finish a site plan proposal to present to the city for review. We'll put a link to the full Oakland Press story in the show notes.
Have you ever seen those late night infomercials, Sven, about alpacas?
No, but I think I need to. I love alpacas.
They're amazing, and here's the deal. They provide both love and income.
Like they're selling alpacas?
Oh, no, it's like a scheme to buy into a farm.
Like an alpaca timeshare.
Right, like you could become Sven the alpaca farmer.
That's amazing. True story. Well, so alpacas are related to llamas. I believe, if I'm safe saying that. Yeah. My wife loves llamas. For one of her birthdays, there was a llama farmer out in northern Oakland County. This is back when I was working at the Oakland Press, and I was covering northern Oakland County, so I knew about this guy. Out in Oxford, actually, far reaches of Oxford Township. And I arranged with him to take my wife out there and spend time with his pet llamas, which he just kept literally just for pets on his property out in Oxford. And I got a lot of brownie points for that one.
An interesting music and movie star collaboration is happening. Detroit electronic and techno music legend Kevin Sanderson has teamed up with movie star and DJ Idris Elba to create, quote, a melting pot of Detroit and UK sounds, unquote, in the studio. Sanderson has been the creative driver of the group Inner City for 3 decades, and the sound has evolved over time. It now includes his son Dantiez, and they last toured with special guest Stephanie Christian. There was no timeline given for the release of this, but as an electronic music fan, I'm very much looking forward to this. I will note here that the Detroit techno sound has generally become extremely popular around the world and in Europe, and much more so than here in the United States and even here in Southeast Michigan. I mean, it is amazing to me how many artists in this scene are huge overseas. They'll play to thousands or tens of thousands, and then you won't hear much of them outside out of a few clubs here in Metro Detroit, and it always stuns me that's the case. I will say that Idris is talented in his own right as a DJ, and if you don't believe me, I will drop a link to one of his sets in the show notes. It's definitely a lot of fun.
I'll also note that Idris Elba was named Sexiest Man Alive by People Magazine in 2018. That is important. Although I guess in 2019 he was no longer the sexiest man alive. It was just that one year he peaked. But I saw him play the defense attorney in the movie Molly's Game, which I watched on the flight last fall to Belarus. Good movie.
You know, one of the things about him, he was in the running for being James Bond, allegedly.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that would have been awesome. I would have loved to see him as James Bond. I think it would have been great. Before we let you go, I wanted to give you a quick heads up that Troy Restaurant Week is coming back next month, March 8th through the 13th. It'll feature 20 restaurants this year with fixed price menus running from about $15 to $45. So a good range and an affordable range. We'll put a link in the show notes to TroyRestaurantWeek.com with the list of everything. But Sven, what are some of your favorites in the list?
Well, a lot of them I frankly have not been to, but a couple that I have. Sedona Tap House is a good location. It's on Big Beaver, as a lot of these places are. Serving kind of an American sort of bar food centric menu, but good, kind of upscale American. Great list of draft beers, as you might imagine, and wines by the glass as well. Manjin Lao, been a long time since I've been there, but excellent like Asian fusion restaurant.
For sure.
Up on Maple and Stevenson, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then Kona Grill is also solid, another Big Beaver establishment. One place in Troy that's not on the list, it's kind of down market, I would say, I guess you could say, from a lot of the places that are participating. Place called El Guanaco, which serves Mexican. It's like a taqueria and Salvadoran cuisine place on Livernois, just north of Maple, I guess it is. Great stuff. I was out there just last weekend, actually, with my kids, and we stopped in. It's a great place to go get an inexpensive and very tasty dinner. One place I'm a little surprised wasn't on the list, Gran Castor. That's the place by Union Joints, the Clarkston restaurant group that also operates Vincetta Garage. That's been on my list for a long time to go try it. It's off the beaten path for me, but Latin concept that has gotten good reviews, and I'm definitely eager to go try it one day. And that's the signal for us to put to bed another episode.
Yes, it is. And by the way, we got featured on the Feed podcast this week. Thanks to Rob Walsh and Elsie Escobar for that. You two are great.
And thanks to you for listening, as always. If you like what you hear, consider supporting us at patreon.com/Daily Detroit. I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jairus Days. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.